The language of grief. Grief is the normal dynamic process that occurs in response to any type of loss. This process encompasses physical, emotional, cognitive, spiritual, and social responses to the loss. It is highly individualized depending on the person's perception of the loss. I started at Hospice Northwest in 2008. I had trained as a birth doula, and after an accident and a severe injury to my leg, I was unable to do that work anymore. So I thought, what can I do instead of that? So I went to the other end of life and became a hospice volunteer, which is really doing the same work. It's delivering someone through a painful experience with as little pain as possible, and it's really the same work. Either end of life is delivery. My mother-in-law started right at the beginning when it was called Via Vitae. And I thought, wow, I would never be able to do that. But life goes on, and you have experiences, and you learn things, and you think, not only can I do that, I want to do that. My first client was just amazing. She was only supposed to be living for probably a month, but she lived for 8 months, and people would see us. She had a little scooter, and people would see us in the hall. "Who's this?" She'd say, it's my adopted daughter." You know, she was a really cool lady. And then after a few months, you start to think, well, she's not going to die. She's going to be here for a long time. And then she did die, and I had a really hard time with my first client. And I remember going into the office and talking to Joan, who was executive director at the time, and Terry Canagieser, who is the volunteer coordinator, and saying, "I don't think I can do this. This is too hard." And Joan explained to me that it was disenfranchised grief, because my friends wouldn't know that this had happened to me. And, you know, there's no involvement for you in this grief after. No one acknowledges that you've just had this loss. And I really missed this lady, and but I was fully supported through all of that at Hospice Northwest, and they said to take a little break and let them know when I was ready for another client. And it's easier the second time. It really is. So right now, for what we'll do is we'll just each of us go around the table and introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about why you're here and who it is that you lost. When I'm working with palliative clients, lots of times they're extremely bored, and they just want someone to sit with them. So often I'll just come in and I'll sit down and just say to them, "Oh, this is the first time I've been able to sit down all day. I'm so glad to be here just to have some time and talk with you. And make sure you remind me when it's 4 o'clock, because time passes so quick when you're in here." And that gives them a feeling like someone actually has time for me. And they just want to talk and review their stories and tell you all the stories that their kids have heard 1,000 times, but they like to have New Year's to tell you about things that have happened to them in their lives. And I've heard amazing stories, really amazing stories. Some days you leave and you think, I really did make a difference today. You know, they'll just grab your hand for that little extra minute before you leave, and, you know, when do you think you can come again? So I've met some really interesting characters.
Katherine Poulin is one of our longest standing volunteers. She does a lot for the organization. She's a very compassionate woman. We're so fortunate and so lucky to have her. She's on our board of directors, which is wonderful. She runs grief and bereavement support groups, and she's also a palliative volunteer. We're just so lucky to have her.
Okay, Gabby, let's go to work. Let's go to work. And this is Gabby. She's our hospice volunteer, and she comes with me for all my visits to my palliative clients, and she also attends the grief and support group. And she comes to all the intake interviews, and she's a real calming presence. If people get upset, she comes over and puts her head on their lap. Hospice offers a lot of enrichment programs, and they like to keep us current and involve us in other things as well. One of the things that I did was they had offered at the time to put everybody who was interested through a level 1 therapeutic touch program, and so I took that and I just continued on with it. I ended up doing all the levels and then doing all the exams and workbooks and everything, and I'm a recognized practitioner now. It's really been interesting for me to just go with what I'm interested in and see where it takes me. These are all personal growth things that really I have found really interesting and enriching, and has really been a blessing in my life.
Hospice Northwest is always actively recruiting volunteers, and right now we just started a recruitment campaign that we are putting flowers in a vase every time we get a new volunteer to join our great organization. And so we've just started, and we've got 5 flowers in the vases. So we've got 5 volunteers recruited for the upcoming training, and we're really excited about that. But we want to have 40 flowers in that vase, and so we're really hoping that people will call us and get hooked up to become a Hospice Northwest volunteer. If someone were interested in volunteering for Hospice Northwest, they would just have to simply call our office at 626-5570 and talk to our volunteer coordinator, Thomas, and we will get them totally set up. They have to have an intake interview, and we'll take them from there. Very simple.
It's really been a journey for me through all of the people I've met, and I think that new volunteers could just, if they stay open to different possibilities and don't stay locked on that one thing you think you want to do. It's always a new experience, and they're really satisfying. Hospice Northwest as an organization really fills a need in this city for grief services as well as palliative care services. And everyone in the office works really hard. They're good at multitasking and using every cent of their hard-won funds that come into the office. I'm very thankful for Hospice Northwest for giving me this opportunity to work with other people, with these really special people in so many different ways.
I just started with Hospice Northwest recently, and what I've been struck by is the compassion, the level of compassion, and everyone is really here for the right reasons, and that's to help people that are at their most vulnerable time, and that's when they're palliative or maybe going through grief and bereavement, and the volunteers here just astound me. They're amazing.